Today we're visiting the almost ghost town of Desert Center and the not quite grave of Desert Steve. No relation. Hey everyone, welcome to Sidetrack Adventures. This is Steve. Today we're going to be exploring a town that was created by a man who got stuck out here in the desert and thought, hey, this is a good place for a town. For decades, it was a popular stop on Highway 60 for travelers heading to and from Los Angeles through the desert. And the town's advertisement said things like, our main street is 100 miles long, and our cafe is open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, because we lost the keys. But like a lot of highway towns, its end came with the coming of the Interstate, and there's not a lot left except for a few abandoned buildings and, surprisingly, the post office. So let's take a look around Desert Center, California. The story of Desert Center starts with a long dirt road and a man named Stephen Ragsdale. Around 1921, Stephen Ragsdale, who was a cotton farmer in the Palo Verde Valley, broke down in the desert on his way to Los Angeles near a place called Grundyke's Well. At that time, the road out here was unpaved and mostly sand. It could take 9 hours or more to travel from the Colorado River to Los Angeles, a drive that now takes about 3 hours, depending on the traffic. While his car was being repaired, Ragsdale stayed at Grundyke's Well, and something about the place must have really spoken to him, because on the way back from Los Angeles, he bought it and moved his family there, changing the name to Desert Center. When they began paving the sand road through the desert that would become Highway 60, the soil was better to the south of where Desert Center was, and the outpost was going to be bypassed. Steve Ragsdale, who became to be known as Desert Steve, decided that he would move the town to where the road was going to be, and Desert Center was moved a few miles to the south. Desert Center was moved here to its current location in 1925, and the very first thing built here was this cafe with attached service station and garage. The cafe was open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, from the 1920s until the early 2000s. Desert Center is located 50 miles west of Blythe and 50 miles east of Indio, which made it a great, and for a while, the only stop for travelers through the desert. And we can kind of take a look inside the garage here. As you could probably tell, it hasn't been in operation for quite some time. There is broken glass everywhere. Here's the service bay. I'm sure this service station here was a lifesaver for quite a few people who had their car break down in the desert. But as cars improved and the interstate replaced the highways, there really just wasn't a need for it anymore. Let's take a look inside here real quick. I'm not sure when the service station shut down, but it was before the cafe. Let's take a look at the cafe itself. It's probably been closed for at least a decade. The cafe was originally run by Steve's wife Lydia, but Steve actually moved away from Desert Center in 1950, but we'll talk more about him a little bit later. Take a look in here, and there's just broken glass everywhere. Well, I don't think we're going to be able to get any fresh baked pie, but let's see if we can go inside. Oh, the door's locked. Guess we'll just have to go through the door. And here's the Desert Center Cafe. A lot of salt packets still here. Well, I see a newspaper on the ground here. Let's see what the date is on this. January 4th, 2012. This place was open 24 hours a day for decades, and just to think of how many people stopped here to grab a bite to eat while traveling through the desert, and now it's just sitting here abandoned. This fireplace probably kept many a traveler warm on a cold desert night. Here's a survey marker on the wall of the cafe. During its heyday, another thing Desert Center was known for was the colorful ads Desert Steve would take out promoting the place, saying things such as, "Free room and board, every day the sun doesn't shine." After the cafe and garage were built, this market was later added to the town, and for a while it sold the most Coleman camping equipment in the nation. The market isn't faring as well as the cafe, though. As you could probably see here, the roof has completely collapsed in. The cash register is still here, though. One thing that wasn't sold here, at least when Desert Steve ran the place, was alcohol. As a former preacher, he hated the stuff and did not allow it in Desert Center. One thing that is still open here is the post office. Everything else on this building is boarded up, but the post office is open Monday through Friday. A lot of places online list Desert Center as a ghost town, but I personally have a hard time calling a place with an open post office a ghost town. That's why I've been calling it an almost ghost town. The 2020 census listed a population of 256 people in Desert Center, though the population is probably a fraction of that in the summer. And right now we're looking at the cabins for the old Desert Center Motel. I had mentioned that Desert Steve left Desert Center in 1950. When he left, his kids took over, and eventually his son Stanley Ragsdale bought out the town. One thing you definitely notice when walking around Desert Center are dead palm trees everywhere. Around 1990, Riverside County came after Stanley Ragsdale and said that the area looked blighted and that he had to do something to fix it up. Stanley wasn't really a fan of progress, but he decided he would plant palm trees along the freeway and then planted them in strange patterns. When Stanley died in 1999, the trees were left unattended and died, but you can still make out some of the patterns today. A couple of other additions Stanley added to the town were this gas station and a hamburger stand across the street. The sign on this station claims it was the last one left, but eventually they left too. It looks like anything of any value has long since been stripped from here. After Stanley Ragsdale died, there was some dispute among the heirs over the town, and it was sold a couple of years ago. I have no idea what the new owner plans to do with it. It definitely doesn't look like they've done anything yet. Let's look in the gas station. And from the smell of the gas station, I think people have been using the gas station as a restroom. Let's walk across the street, get some fresh air, and take a quick look at the hamburger stand. After the gas station, I think I'm going to pass on getting too close to the hamburger stand's doors. I can see from here, it looks like an absolute mess in there. Here's the Desert Center School, which opened in 1952, and I believe it closed in 1983. In the early 1950s, they had as many as 110 students here. Early in Desert Center's history, Steve Ragsdale asked for a teacher to be sent out here, and the county refused because there wasn't enough children. So Ragsdale put out an ad in the Los Angeles newspapers asking for a mechanic with a large family so that he could increase the number of children and hopefully get a teacher. His plan worked, and in 1922, the first school in Desert Center opened. There were a number of Desert Center school buildings over the years. After Desert Center was moved to its current location, the first schoolhouse here ended up getting destroyed by goats, and a new school had to be built. As the population grew, so did the school, until this more permanent school was constructed. Here's what looks to be the school auditorium and probably gym. There are still quite a few chairs stacked in here, like the school just closed one day, not knowing they were never going to reopen. Here's one of the classrooms. There are only a couple of classrooms at the school. Here's the other classroom. Now we're at the back of the school, and you can see Interstate 10 going by right next to it. And of course, a bunch of dead palm trees. Now that we've taken a look at the town, we're going to head to the other side of the freeway and see if we could find the not quite grave of Desert Steve Ragsdale. Now we've come to what Desert Steve called the alligator, where he built a shack where he could peacefully write his bad poetry, and where he planned for his final resting place to be. He called it the alligator because he said that's what the mountain looked like, and I could kind of see it. There's a foundation of some sort down here at the bottom of the mountain. I'm not exactly sure what this was for. I know Desert Steve had a shack on the mountain, but I believe it was closer to the top. Let's head up the alligator a little bit and check out the spot that Desert Steve intended to be his final resting place. Looks like the path is over here. Desert Steve put his own grave marker up here, but he ended up leaving Desert Center around 1950 and moved to the summit of Santa Rosa Mountain. He died there in 1971 at age 88 and is buried in Coachella Valley. And the reason he's buried there and not here is because this is BLM land and you just can't legally bury someone here. Now, I'm not actually sure what this is. I don't know if this is the grave he dug for himself or what this was. The plaque is back there. We'll look at that in a minute. I want to check this sign out. See if we can make out what it said. And it's kind of hard to read, but it looks like it said Desert Center Cemetery on it. Here's a look back towards the interstate from up here. You can see the foundation at the bottom of the hill that we were just at. And here's the grave marker Desert Steve put up for himself. Get a closer look at it. It's pretty funny. I know it's a little hard to read, so I'll try to zoom in on it. You can see he put his date of birth of June 16th, 1882 at the top, but his date of death is left blank at the bottom. He was definitely quite the character. I like the line on this that says, "I put this damn thing up before I kicked off." There's also this little cave under the boulder. I don't know if his plan was to be buried under here, or if it was to be buried where we saw a minute ago, or somewhere else. I just noticed there's another plaque on a boulder a little bit higher up the hill. So let's walk up here and take a look and see what this is. Huh. Mac, C.R. McCurry, 1902 to 1951, erected by his fellow employees. But I'm not sure employees of what. Now I'm taking a look around, kind of curious to see if we'll find any more plaques up here. I don't see any, but I do see the trail to the top. So while we're up here, we might as well keep going up and see what's up there. I believe at the top is where Desert Steve's shack would have been. I don't think there's anything left of it up there, but I guess there's one way to find out. Well, there is some metal rods sticking out of the ground, and oh, it looks like there's at least one post. Oh, no, there's 4 posts up here. So this is probably where Desert Steve's shack was. I'm not sure when these posts would have been put up here, but they definitely don't look to be 70 plus years old. But here's the view Desert Steve would have had from up here. Minus all the solar panels, of course. There's a huge solar farm right there. But there's Desert Center below us. And if we look this way, we can see Interstate 10 heading west towards Los Angeles through the desert. So that's our look at Desert Center and the not quite grave of Desert Steve. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week.